Hey everyone, and welcome to another podcast, Self Employed, the Forgotten Community. This week we're going to be talking a little bit about leakage problems. Most self employed people don't have a revenue problem, they have a leakage problem. Time leaking, money leaking, energy leaking. And today we're going to discuss that a little and maybe towards the end give you an idea of how you could perhaps do an audit on leakages and see where you go from there. Hi Dan, how are you? Another week?
Another week, exactly. Time and money leakages and energy leakages. And, I think they're all connected. Like, I remember being up at 4 o'clock in the morning, like watching Dr. Phil, and I'm wondering where the next Bob is going to come from. Right. And thinking back on it now, a lot of it was, yeah, cash flow was the big problem. Right. But I think time was worse because I had more time leakages that I wasn't giving myself enough time to send out invoices, get money in, right? And also dealing with the wrong type of client. That's a big one as well when it goes to time leakages. I did a training, like, and I keep saying, like, this is not about us, Dan, but if we can tell a story, it might help someone. You know, I was doing a training with a group of auctioneers a week ago, and we were talking about the right target market, but it led us into the wrong target market, the wrong people. You know, I might say to people, and you're the same then. Say, right, okay, what's your target market? And they might struggle. Okay, describe the people you don't want. By Jesus, do they kick in and start describing. But when we're down to the auctioneers, we were saying, because a lot of their business is letting and property maintenance and stuff. And they all agreed that the wrong type of client creates so much time leakage and money leakage that they could actually close you. Wrong target market could actually close a business. They demand everything. They won't pay you in time if they pay you at all, and a whole lot of that scenario. So, you know, people listen to following us in this podcast. They might say these fellas do anything else but talk about target market. But it is right, though. The wrong target market. You remember back in the day then, we do trainings and we'd be talking about target market and all that, and everyone goes, yeah, Dan, yeah. Right. But since COVID, if you don't have the right target market and if you're not dealing with the right people, they potentially could close you down. What do you think?
Yeah, I think definitely from a time leakage perspective, saying yes to the wrong clients is top of the pops. It definitely is because, and sometimes you have to be brave, and there's certain clients that you just have to say no to. And then you start to underprice, which leads to overservicing. And you know that as well as I do, underpricing, overservicing. And you find that the people that are the wrong type of client are taking up most of your time. So suddenly you don't have enough time then to focus on the clients that could potentially be giving you that extra edge. Other time leakages could be things like, constantly, and I do it myself now and again, but constantly checking emails, sort of reactive email checking, so to speak, as opposed to being proactive about setting a time aside every day for checking your emails. And I'm a great believer in if someone else can do the job, you shouldn't be doing it, from a time management perspective. So doing tasks that you should have delegated years ago is definitely a big thing for me. And we spoke a little bit last week from a time leakage perspective. We spoke a little bit last week about networking. And it's this whole networking without intention, going to any old network at all in the hope that you could pass out 100 business cards. And of course, all you're doing is handing out business cards, which is costing you more money in the long term, but you're going to get nothing in return from it, only wasting time and wasting money. So yeah, for me, time leakages is a big problem for the self-employed because busyness can feel as if you're being productive, but you know what? You're not moving forward. You're being
You're
busy
not.
for the sake of being busy.
Yeah, and we're talking about time, and I know I mentioned this in, I think it was the last episode we did. We were talking about time, embracing modern technology, like you know AI, for instance. Where were you in the 80s when I needed you most? And and also I find scheduling your diary. And I did mention this today, but if someone missed it, I really want to tell the story about emails. You know, I email you then. Can you can we meet at 10 o'clock next Tuesday, right, to discuss this project? And you email me back. Can't do 10 o'clock. I can do 11 o'clock. Then I ring you back. I can't do or email you back. I can't do 11 o'clock. I can do Thursday 11 o'clock. You know where it's going? Now you have 5, 6 threads of emails back and forth and back and forth. And one of the two of us is going to drop the ball, and next thing there'll be nothing booked. And I discovered Calendly, and I two things happened. One, I sat on it for 2 years. I said, send you out a link, book a time with me. And I was saying, like, I'm being a knob here now, like, book a time with me, and I goes, but then when I actually took a step forward and incorporated it, my clients loved it because it cut out all those emails, cut out all that time. They can now actually go into my calendar and they can hop on that Calendly, the link that they have booked, and change it themselves. So my email traffic I must have gone down 50%. And I
Yeah.
definitely saved 4 hours a week.
Yeah, I use Calendly as well, and I have it, in fact, on the signature of my email, so that when I send it out, my clients get the opportunity to book a meeting with me by going directly to my calendar. And as you're right, it just cuts out the emailing backwards and forwards. Just wasting time setting up meetings when you can be getting on with more productive things, and the meeting will happen anyway because you just get a message saying that you have a meeting booked for Tuesday at 9 o'clock next week, and away you go. So
Yeah.
yeah, and you introduced me to Calendly, so yeah, there you
And
go.
the other thing I would say, though, like for anyone that's listening, right, manage your diary first. Because Calendly will kill you if you don't manage it. Like, you'll get no lunch if you don't block off lunchtime. Because if there's a 1 o'clock slot available, the client will book it on. It's according to Calendly, it's available, and you get no lunch. And now the two of us, then we like our lunches. And the other thing I found, like, I definitely hand in hat would say Calendly saved me 4 hours a week. Now, what did I do with those 4 hours? And I think to our listeners, this is important. Those 4 hours I allocated to Friday afternoon, and I took the time off. That means then I rewarded myself by embracing modern technology and turned it into time off. It didn't mean that I had more time to go off and waste time again, thinking, like you said, imagining that you're being productive. I took half a day off on Friday, and then I used more modern technology to take the first half of Friday off. So now I work 4 days because of modern technology. But I think the message I'm trying to get here is reward yourself. If you embrace change like that, reward yourself. What do you think?
Absolutely. I tend to block Fridays completely off on Calendly. I don't have any appointments on a Friday. What it does for me is it gives me options, and if you have options, it means that you have freedom of time, and that
Yeah.
starts to prevent time leakages. What about money leakages then? I mean, common money leakages would be, you start to discount too quickly, or you you have poor payment terms. You don't have a structure in place, or for me, a big one is not having a referral strategy. That's a big money leakage for me. What do you think about money leakages?
Yeah. Okay. The best way I can describe that is I can tell another story. I was de- I was dealing with garage. Oh, this must be 10, 15 years ago, right? But it's a great story on how to get it right and money leakages. This person was in the crash repair business. You know, crash a car, put in a new wing, all this kind of stuff. Now, that's a very expensive business. Like a liter of paint, car paint, like could be a couple of €100. It's, it's very expensive. And I found that this particular client had maybe 5 or 6 mechanics working for him, repairing cars. And his cash flow was abysmal. It was like the poor devil hadn't Bob barely make payroll on a Thursday night, you know. And he was saying to me, look, if I get in another panel beater, it means I can take on more work and I'll be able to pay everybody. But I was saying, like, okay, I don't think you need another panel beater because I think that's like putting petrol on a fire. I think what you need is a good bookkeeper. And then he laughed at me. He was a good bookkeeper. Sure, they can't fix, put on a panel. I said, no, you need to have a mechanism, like you said, and a process to collect money. So he actually agreed with me. And what he did was he went off and he bought a porta cabin and he hired a bookkeeper. And I called to him maybe a week after, and he said, you wouldn't believe it. He said, I spend €3,500 on a porta cabin and I hired a bookkeeper and it happened to be a girl, put the girl in there. She had the price of the porta cabin made in an hour and a half. The first hour and a half she worked, she had the price of the porta cabin identified because credit notes that my client never looked at, never thought of, got buried in paperwork. And he turned around then, he cleared the decks. What we did then was we worked on their brand and we attracted the decent insurance companies that would pay him on time. And the big thing was happening was he was actually doing work for the wrong target market. Now, you send out a car, it's done, it's lovely and shiny, and it's all ready for road again. Now your time and your materials are gone out the gate, and you're expecting to get paid straight away, and you're not. So what he was doing was he was bankrolling all the garages locally, and he was giving credit to everyone. So he was their bank, and it nearly broke him. It nearly
Yeah,
broke him until he made a stop.
yeah, giving credit to your clients without getting credit from your suppliers. There's a big issue there, And then what you start to do is you start and you mentioned it there. You start accepting perfect work just to keep cash flowing. You start building a wrong strategy. You start, I'll hire another panel beater because it means that I'm going to be able to get more crash repairs done quickly. But of course, the quicker you work, the more raw materials you're going to use. The more raw materials you use, the less credit you have anyway, and it becomes a vicious circle. It's about tracking margins, I think, really, and tracking your margins properly when it comes to money leakages, and undercharging due to lack of confidence, and not tracking your margins properly will close your business. As you rightly said,
Yeah.
we we mentioned we mentioned emotional leakages. Then what would be the big emotional leakages for you, do you think?
What would you mean by emotional leakage now? Explain that to me.
So for me, one of the the emotional leakages that a business can face or a business owner can face would be decision fatigue or overthinking things, maybe,
Yes.
avoiding difficult conversations, or going back to of prices raising, or as we just spoke about, fear of letting clients go, which is a big one for me.
It is. It is. I go back to the training I did last week with the auctioneers, and we found that we described the wrong target market, right? And especially in the letting side, they had about 70% of their clients were actually the wrong target market, and they had 30% of their clients a good target market. So the idea was at least swap that around, at least bring the wrong ones down to 30% and the right ones up to 70%. It's fine. It can be fine margins as well then. I remember my wife and I, we had music schools way back in the day, right? From 1986 to 96. And we sat down with the accountants and we did like, oh my God, I threw everything at it. I really wanted to get it right. I got the best accountants in. I got the best of everything. I really wanted to do it right. And we sat with the accountants, we did the numbers, and we were working on, after paying ourselves, we were operating on a 10% net margin after paying everybody, paying all the teachers. We had 13 music teachers and ourselves, right? But here's the thing, and we didn't figure this one out, right? We had 10% bad debt because someone would send little Louise, 6-year old, into the classroom, and little Louise was trained to say, my mommy would see you next week, right? So now, what you going to do with young Louise? Throw her up the street? You know, so like, you talk about emotional drain, right? That's emotional drain. And
That-
that,
That's
that,
avoiding
huh?
that's avoiding the difficult conversations with Louise's mother, isn't it? Really? So
And they played on that because, like, we had 720 students at one time, right? Now, multiply that up, the little amount of Louises, right, that comes in as, and my mommy said she'll see you next week, right? But that got rid of our margin. Now, it leads me also to say, you talk about emotional drain, right? Never do your numbers on based on logic. You know, you talk to an accountant, and some of my best friends are accountants, right? I'm not saying anything, but accountants, quite rightly, I suppose, they think on logic and they think on ROI and your return on investment and all this, right? But we must really look at consumer behavior and the way people think, right? It like in that case now, emotion logic went out the window because we had all the sums right. We had it all, everything crossed, I's dotted, everything. 10% margin after we pay ourselves, after hitting a certain amount of turnover, right? But that wasn't the case. Emotion kicked in. And that part of the business we didn't factor in. Little
yeah,
Louise.
yeah, yeah. Emotional leakages will definitely cost the business momentum, and it'll cost the business confidence. It'll cost the business owner confidence, and ultimately that will lead to lack of growth. So, and you'll find with emotional leakage, and you alluded to there, emotional leakage is often the root cause of financial leakage, because you're afraid to have the hard conversations, which ultimately leads to a lack of cash flow, which is ultimately going to lead to financial leakage. So it's, yeah, time, money, and energy leakages then. You could be the best business owner in the world, but unless you recognize that, that they could destroy a business, it's important that, you try and put some tactical things in place to, number one, recognize, and number two, try and fix the leakages that we have in the business.
One of the things, like if again, if people listening to this podcast, they say, okay, what do I do? So, right? My one tip would be, well, two. One would be up your game and build the brand, enhance your brand to attract the better client. There are very good clients out there. They want a job well done, right? They don't mind paying. Yeah, once you're reasonable with them, they don't mind paying. They understand they need to pay on time. They understand you have a business to run. Now, start building those first. And it's amazing, Dan. It happened myself several times. If you start attracting the good clients, it's easier to let the bad ones go. Because if you don't, you'll never let them go. Because we have this flight, what is it, fear of flight, right?
Yeah.
We won't let any client go, irrespective if they're paying us or not. It's in our head. Whether they're paying us or they're not paying us, they're a client. But if we bring in that, like that 70-30 I was talking about, if we attract the better client, we can let the poor ones go, you know,
Yeah.
and,
And
and they go on.
it's identifying then, Dan, I suppose, identifying the three drains, whether it's time, money, or emotional leakage that you have. And we already discussed it, some of the key fixes for leakages are eliminate. So eliminate emails going backwards and forwards,
Yeah.
delegate. If someone else can do the job, then you shouldn't be doing it as a business owner. Redesign your process, introduce something like Calendly into your scheduling. Don't be afraid to increase price. And then
Yes. Well,
just what you mentioned there, find the right lane and then protect that right lane. The high value activity is what business owners need to be chasing. Getting the ideal clients that are willing to pay that high value, so that you you start to eliminate time and emotional leakages. And by eliminating those, you're going to start to put a plug in the financial leakages as well. And being strategic about the way you think about time is very, very important as well. And you said that at the very start of the podcast, when you gave yourself a reward for taking Friday afternoons off. So it's 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 important that business owners recognize the leakages and fix them as soon as possible. The fastest way
yeah.
to grow in your business is to plug the holes
Yeah.
that exist.
There is one other thing too that I think business owners should do. How easy is it for people to pay you? How many times people call you? You might get a plumber. He'll call and he'll do a job. And then you want to pay him, right? Oh no, the office will be on to you about that. Wrong. A little sum up thing, take a car payment there and then that's it. Right? It again, modern technology. I remember, and we'll run over time here, but very quick story. I was out walking the dog, it was a good couple of years ago, and a client rang me. Their office rang me. They wanted to pay an invoice to me. They wanted to pay an invoice, but they couldn't find the invoice. So any chance you'd send it again. Now I was out on the beach in West Kerry walking the dog, right? But I was able to get my phone. I said, yeah, 2 minutes. Got my phone onto my account software package, which was Sort My Books, and I had it resent within 2 minutes, and I just continued walking the dog. But watch how easy is it for people to pay you. Some people make it very complicated.
That's a nice segue into our next episode, Dan, because we're lucky enough to have Anne Hannon from Sort My Books um,
Yes,
coming on to our next episode, and we'll talk a little bit about cash flow, which will obviously help with time leak, or will help with financial leakages, but it'll also help with emotional leakages. And, we look forward to that. But for this week, plug those holes, become more successful in business, and we'll see you all again on our next episode. See you then.
Yes. See you, people.